on the same wavelength when she came down to Pell House the other day, and I was sitting at a table talking to Tom, and she came in, and like the gentleman I am, I stood up and said, "Would you like a chair next to your handsome husband?" And she said, "I sure would, but unfortunately I only have the one." But when I knew that I was going to roast Tom, I knew it was also pretty easy, because when I got in the computer and I typed in the search words husband and joke, the first thing that popped up was a picture of Tom. So we had an opportunity to stay this summer for a couple of nights at Tom and Ann's, and we were in a really nice bedroom down next to the family room in the basement. And what I liked best about it is I had uninterrupted access to all their private belongings. And one of the things that I found was a diary. Both Ann and Tom kept a diary when they were first married. And one of the stories I read about was, and it actually kind of overlaps a little bit with Harry and Dorothy's toast the other night, was during their wedding ceremony. They were doing the vows, and the minister said, "Ann, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" And she said, "I do." And he leans over and he says, "I want you to understand, if you marry this man, you may not feel anything below the waist."
That must have been your younger years,
I also read that on their honeymoon, their car was stolen. And it seems they had stopped for dinner, and Tom went out to gas up the car, and he came running back in. He says, Ann, somebody just drove away in our car. And she says, "Well, did you get a good look at him?" He said, "No, but I got their license number." I also read the story about the time that Ann had to go down and bail Tom out of jail. It seems that a farmer, Wisconsin's farm country, and a farmer had called in that Tom was sexually abusing a piece of his farm equipment. And she had to bail him out. Now, when I read Tom's diary, I got a completely different story on this. He blames it on Ralph Krieger. He says, "I went to Ralph and I was asking for advice. I said, Ralph, Ann has lost interest in me in the bedroom. And I don't really feel that my needs are being met." And Ralph says, "Well, why don't you do something romantic to attract her?" Tom has always been a little naive when it came to sex. Before they were married, Ann was very proper, but Tom's friends were always encouraging him, if you ever get an opportunity, Tom, you need to be prepared. So he went down to the drugstore, which is not easy to do in Waterton, and it's a small town, everybody knows everybody. But he got enough nerve to go up to the counter and ask the druggist, he says, "Do you have any condoms?" And the druggist says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, how much are they?" And the druggist says, 50 cents. He says, "Well, I'll take one." And the druggist says, "That'll be 52 cents. And Tom looks at him and says, "What's the other 2 cents for?" And the druggist says, "That's for tax." Tom says, "Oh, I wondered how you held them on." And there was another story in there about how romantic Tom could be. It seems one night they were both laying in bed, and all of a sudden Tom ran his hand over her back. And a second later he ran his hand over her arm and her chest. And a few seconds later he ran his hand up and down her leg. And about this time she's starting to get interested, and he stops. And she looks over and says, "Tom, why did you stop?" He says, "Oh, I found the remote." And then there was a time that Tom was driving through the countryside with one of his friends from Michigan. And they started to go by a sheep that was stuck, its head was stuck in the fence. And the Michigan friend was driving, and he says, "In Michigan, we never pass up an opportunity like this." So he stopped the car and pulled over and had his way with the sheep. And he turned to Tom and he says, "Tom, it's your turn." And Tom says, "No, I've never done anything like that." And he says, "Well, why don't you give it a try?" Tom says, "Okay." So he gets down on all fours and sticks his head in the fence.
Molly laughing at the last day. That's been Marv driving.
I love the time in Michigan because everybody in here is looking around at the other guys in Michigan. So it was John Rapson. And of course, there's lots of stories in there about golf. And my favorite was Ann was playing. She's actually down here in Florida. She was playing Spruce Creek, which, as you may know, is a fly-in community, and it's actually where John Travolta lived for a while. Kept the plane out there. So Ann is out on the course, and she made a turn too sharp, and the golf cart tipped over. And she's trying to pull it back up right, and she hears this voice behind her, and she turns around, and sure enough, it's John Travolta. He says, "Miss," he says, "you're injured." He says, "You need to come into my house and let me bandage you up." He says, No, my husband wouldn't like that." But she goes with him, and he bandages her up, and she starts to get up to leave, and he says, No, miss, you don't want to go back out there yet. He says, "You're still rattled." And she says, "No, my husband will be upset if I don't go back out there." He says, "Don't worry about it." He says, "Let me get you a drink." Gets her a drink, gets her settled down. She finishes her drink and starting to get up, and he starts rubbing her shoulders. She says, "I really need to go now, or my husband's going to be very, very angry." He says, "Where is your husband anyhow?" He says, "Well, he's still under the cart."
You sure that wasn't Bill Cosby?
But my favorite entries in the diary, this was a his and hers from the same day. So this is Ann's entry. It says, "Dear Diary, tonight I thought Tom was acting weird. We had made plans to meet at a nice restaurant for dinner. I was shopping with my friends all day long, so I thought he was upset at the fact I was a bit late, but he made no comment on it. Conversation wasn't flowing, so I suggested that we go somewhere quiet so we could talk. He agreed, but he didn't say much. I asked him what was wrong. He said nothing. I asked him if it was my fault that he was upset. He said he wasn't upset, that it had nothing to do with me, and not to worry about it. On the way home, I told him I loved him. He smiled slightly and kept on driving. I can't explain his behavior, and I don't know why he didn't say, 'I love you too.' When we got home, I felt as if I had lost him completely, as if he wanted nothing to do with me. He just sat there quietly and watched TV. He continued to seem distant and absent. Finally, with silence all around us, I decided to go to bed. About 15 minutes later, he came to bed. I persuaded him to make love, but afterwards he just rolled over and still seemed distant. He fell asleep, and I lay there crying. I don't know what is wrong or how to fix it. My life is a disaster." This is Tom's entry from the same day. "The Badgers lost today, but at least I got laid." That is so true, isn't it? And one more, I found a poem by Robert Burns that I thought was fitting for the occasion. "There once was a lady named Anne who went out in search of a man. I don't know why Cupid shot both her and stupid, but she's doing the best that she can." Happy birthday, Anne.
I have a footnote to this, and you will find it hard to believe. But 20 years ago or so, we have a group of a dozen couples or so that go on a golf outing every year for 3 days. We were playing golf it was on a par 4, and one of the few times, as Jim can attest, I hit my drive out of the fairway into some trees, and we went over and we couldn't find the ball. So I took a ball and a club and proceeded to walk over to the fairway. Well, meanwhile, Ann was in the cart, and she stayed on the passenger side of the cart, and she was operating the brake and the foot feed with her left foot. So she circled around behind me and came up to where I was about to make a shot. She took her, as you would hope that she would do, took her foot off of the pedal, foot feed, and tried to put it on the brake, and she missed the brake and hit the pedal again and hit warp speed and ran me over, and literally ran me over. And I was pretty injured. And she, I'm screaming at her. What the hell are you doing? There's words to that effect.
Wasn't that?
And she tried to put it in reverse and back up, and I started to get out, and she ran over me again.
Did you get the message?
I got the message, but I survived, and now on June 25th we will celebrate our 50 years of blissful marriage.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.